Oh, all right. Hi. Hello. How are ya? I'm Kate. This is my puppy, Chips. Like poker chips. Um, hi. Thanks for being here. Um, in the description, I have a link to a talk from Alison McDowell. It's on her Wrench in the Gears channel. She's created this huge, amazing digital map, and it's really complicated. So she's starting to break down some of these connections. And I wanted to do this talk really quick because in the talk I linked to by Allison with her friend Cliff, she talks about WGBH Boston and PBS just a little bit. She touches on that. And it made me think about the time that I got to work for WGBH Boston when they came to Salt Lake City. They produced the Antiques Roadshow, and I got to be a stage manager when they came to Salt Lake City in 2016. And it was right after my son was born. So I remember like when I got that phone call, it was just days after he was born, and I was offered that gig. And at the time, I was so stoked. I loved it. The episode that I got to work on, one of the first things that we did was pre-tape a segment. The road show goes like a Saturday and a Sunday, where they tape a bunch of segments while all the people are allowed to stand in line with their object to hopefully get it appraised and get a spot on the show. So the Friday before it was going to be open to the public, they had some, pre-submission people that had like weird large objects. And this guy brought in this huge piece that was made by one of his relatives. And it reminded me of like steampunk, because it was kind of from that 1800s era where they were inventing all these different mechanisms using steam power. And this thing they presumed, hi CJ, this thing they presumed was like a fish tank and a bird cage, and it had electric lights, and they thought it could have run off of a steam engine thing. And that got me tangentially thinking about just how it seems like in so many ways, like individuals might be seen as devolving because there's just like all these conveniences in our lives, but there's also so many complications in our lives. And so we kind of outsource everything. We've become specialized, and, maybe we're making great advances technologically, but are we individually all that technical? And can we, fix the plumbing when it breaks? Or, maybe there's plenty of people out there that can afford the repairman, but they could also fix it in a jam. And I'm just speaking to this idea of like, what are we losing when we outsource every little thing? And it kind of hits close to home with me because I do like just this one simple task for people, like once or twice a week. And it's just a bullshit job they don't want to do. They just don't want to have to deal with it. And so I thought about how the context of this digital future, and like there's lots of people that are totally unaware of it. really. They're just kind of going along with it. They're not politicized either on either side. And then there's the people really gung-ho, like the crypto boys. And then there's maybe, the Allisons that are like shouting, hey, look what's happening. And it just got me thinking about this whole big web that we're in. And so, yeah, I wonder, like, what is it? Is it just trade-offs? I mean, are we really devolving? Is that too simple of a way to explain it? Like, I don't really think that. I think in many ways we're capable of so much more now. It's just, how much time do you give to the observations? Is it really just that we're distracted and we're not able to pay attention to all these things? It's not that we're not capable. What? I have him. He's on the stream with me. So I don't know. I just been thinking about a lot of stuff because last night I was up way too late, and I've been trying to look into things close to home. I think if we all do that and we all represent like the little microcosm, it's not being narcissist to talk about the things you like, to try and share things that you value and you appreciate with other people. Like, I think that word gets thrown around way too much, and we need not psychologically diagnose others, because there's a lot of problems with that whole field just in general. And like the way my herbalist Josh Williams, the Green Art channel on YouTube, and he has a local herb shop, apothecary in Salt Lake City. He's way more into these practices, but I appreciate getting a purview to it, but I don't ascribe to every single thing that he does, all of his rituals and everything like that. But I can really appreciate it because I think it's different than a lot of the new agey BS that's out there. And one thing that Josh will really call out is this idea that, we think of a plant or a person or a dog as like, oh, they're good for this, and it's so reductive. And so I think, while I appreciate Allison's work so much, and I think, she's on another level. She has a much more rigorous academic training than I did. And I had opportunities for sure. And I was in advanced programs, but I did not apply myself whatsoever. I was such a flake because I spread myself out way too thin, and I was in band, and I was on swim team, and I played water polo, and, just tried to do all the things, and didn't do any of them very, very well, but, had enough kind of natural ability at some things. And then the rest of the time, I just felt like I was bullshitting my way through, and I was a fraud. And, I really ran away from like responsibilities a lot of times, although there were some things that I could do very well for like short periods of time. I think that's why I was good in broadcasting, because I didn't have to do it that often. relatively. I'd work like 1 or 2 nights a week. And so, although I did that stuff for many, many years, it was so different than like a 9 to 5, 5 days a week job. Those I always just fucked up. And so things now are really different for me. I'm coming to appreciate the opportunity to focus more. But because I've been so sloppy in my life up to this point, like there's only so polished that I can be. And I think that's fine. I think that's part of this work. Is that we just bring our honest and humble selves, and we try our best. And I think it's really cool to be able to build these like super small communities online, because even if we're trying to like avoid the machine, we're born into it, so how do we affect it in such a way that may be for the greater benefit? And my daughter really wants to participate, and she wants to know if she can be in the intro of my next stream with her dino mask. My daughter is so cool and so creative, and I think we're going to be doing some we're going to pre-tape some videos. So I don't think I'll have Clem be in any lives for a while, but she's a natural director and performer. So as long as she can remain anonymous-ish, I'm gonna let her record some of her videos, because I know she's got a lot of great ideas. So anyway, I wanted to just reply to my Clem real quick. She's in the chat. All right. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, we found out in our this might be dangerous information to disclose, because according to sources on the internet that I don't have to share with you right now, the bloodline of Jesus Christ lives. And we were on our genealogy, and we found a link all the way back on FamilySearch.com to Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, and it was in our family tree. And that just cracked me up, because it got me down the best rabbit hole ever. And it reminded me of the show Preacher. So if you haven't watched Preacher, it's really that really ties it all in my opinion. Just what I'm rattling off about. I know it sounds like nonsense, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, to all my Christian friends and other people that would be offended by me, I'm pretty crass, but I still got a lot of love, so the way that I'm going to talk about things, yeah, it might make people, might turn some people off, but that's fine with me, honestly, because this is really a labor of love for me, just trying to get open and honest and authentic. And so I'm really always grateful for that opportunity. And today I had some really nice customers give me some super good tips, and that helps because it was a super snowy day yesterday, and it was still very cold today, lots of snow on the ground, and I did my best. But yeah, some days it's really hard just to get out and go and do it. And uh and yet I always find there are these little rewards that mean just a little bit more than money. And sometimes it's just like somebody taking the time to come out and hand you some little cash tip. Like that means a hell of a lot more than just the value of that currency and what I could get for it. It just makes you feel like really appreciated. Especially when somebody gives you like a $20 bill. It just, I don't know. To me, that kind of gesture, it really means a lot. And so I think that's why I'm just so humbled by this world, and I really don't want to have anything to fear by appearing kind of silly or stupid or full of shit or just absurd, because we all are. And if anything, I just want to be a good reflection for other people and be like a safe place, for all the weirdos, all the loners. I've always really attracted those kinds of people. And I think I've been lucky too, because I've just been fortunate to have had lots of kids ask me out on dates when I was young, or always got asked to the dances. Always was able to have a friend. And I wasn't like super popular, I don't think, but I was really never without a buddy. I always had like one great friend for each school year or something. And so I think that quality matters more than the quantity. So going back to like this digital future, this labyrinth, as Alison McDowell's calling it, yeah, I find it really interesting that I've been compelled to look into like my family history, not so much for like, I mean, I guess pride is like a side effect, but it's just pure curiosity. And so, yeah, to look back on some graph, on some map, and it's like, oh, wow, supposedly I go back to these kings and queens and even Jesus. It's like, it makes me feel really powerful, and it makes me feel like I don't have too much to fear. Because the people in our past, in our long history, they've suffered so much. I briefly wanted to jump over to this old lecture. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, Friedrich Schiller. You may or may not know who he is, or you might scoff. But there's the Schiller Institute. So if you're studying economics and like LaRouche, that's the Schiller Institute. I'm just looking into it as a point of view, because you really can't think about things that you've never heard of before. So I heard about this earlier today, and I thought it was interesting. This was from a lecture from 1789. What is and to what end do we study universal history? Gentlemen, it is a delightful and honorable commission for me to wander into the future at your sides through a field which reveals so many objects of study to the thinking observer, such magnificent examples for the emulation of the active worldly man, such important explanations for the philosopher, and such rich sources of most noble joy for everyone without exception. The grand and broad field of universal history. The sight of so many splendid young men gathered about me by their noble thirst for knowledge, and in whose midst some genius flourishes who will make himself felt in future ages, transforms my obligation into pleasure, but also makes me feel the weight and importance of this enterprise in its full force. The greater the gift I must bequeath upon you, and what greater gift than truth has any man to give man? The more I must take caution that its value is not debased in my hands. The more lively and pure your spirit conceives in this happiest epoch of its activity, and the quicker your youthful passions glow, the greater the demand upon me to prevent this enthusiasm, which only truth has the right to awaken, from being wasted unworthily by fraud and deception. The field of history is fecund and vastly encompassing. In its sphere lies the entire moral world. It accompanies us through all the conditions mankind has experienced, through all the shifting forms of opinion, through his folly and his wisdom, his deterioration and his ennoblement. History must give account of everything man has taken and given. There is none among you to whom history had nothing important to convey. However different the paths toward your future destinies, it somewhere binds them together. But one destiny you all share in the same way with one another, that which you brought with you into this world, to educate yourself as a human being. A history addresses itself to this human being. And history addresses itself to this human being. But, gentlemen, before I can undertake to determine more exactly your expectations of this object of your diligence, and to explain its connection with the real purpose of your diverse studies, it were not superfluous for me to reach agreement with you on that purpose of your studies, a preliminary clarification of this question, which seems appropriate and worthwhile enough to me, at the beginning of our future academic relationship, will enable me directly to draw your attention to the most dignified side of world history. The course of studies which the scholar who feeds on bread alone sets himself is very different from that of the philosophical mind. The former, who for all his diligence is interested merely in fulfilling the conditions under which he can perform a vocation and enjoy its advantages, who activates the powers of his mind only thereby to improve his material conditions and to satisfy a narrow-minded thirst for fame, such a person has no concern upon entering his academic career, more important than distinguishing most carefully those sciences which he calls studies for bread, from all the rest, which delight the mind for their own sake. Such a scholar believes that all the time he devoted to these latter, he would have to divert from his future vocation, and this thievery he could never forgive himself. He will direct all of his diligence to the demands made upon him by the future master of his fate, and he will believe he has achieved everything once he has made himself capable of not fearing this authority. Once he has run his course and attained the goal of his desires, he dismisses the sciences which guided him, for why should he bother with them any longer? His greatest concern now is to display these accumulated treasures of his memory and to take care that their value not depreciate. Every extension of his bread science upsets him, because it portends only more work, or it makes the past useless. Every important innovation frightens him because it shatters the old school form which he so laboriously adopted, and it places him in danger of losing the entire effort of his preceding life. Who rants more against reformers than the gaggle of bread-fed scholars? Who more holds up the progress of useful revolutions in the kingdom of knowledge than these very men? Every light radiated by a happy genius, in whichever science it be, makes their poverty apparent. Their foils are bitterness, insidiousness, and desperation, for in the school system they defend, they do battle at the same time for their entire existence. On that score, there is no more irreconcilable enemy, no more jealous official, no more eager to denounce heresy than the bread-fed scholar. The less his knowledge rewards him on its own account, the more he devours a claim thrown at him from the outside. But he has but one standard for work of the craftsman, as well as for work of the mind, effort. Thus, one hears no one complain more about ingratitude than the bread-fed scholar. He seeks his rewards not in the treasures of his mind. His recompense he accepts from the recognition of others, from positions of honor, from personal security. If he miscarries in this, who is more unhappy than the bread-fed scholar? He has lived, worried, and worked in vain. He has sought in vain for truth, if for him this truth not transfer itself into gold, published praise, and princely favor. Pitiful man who, with the noblest of all tools, with science and art, desires and obtains nothing higher than the day laborer with the worst of tools, who, in the kingdom of complete freedom, drags an unslaved soul around with him. Still more pitiful, however, is the young man of genius whose natural beautiful stride is led astray by harmful theories and models upon this sad detour, who was persuaded to collect ephemeral details for his future vocation, so wretchedly meticulous. His vocational science of patchwork will soon disgust him. Desires will awaken in him which it cannot satisfy. His genius will revolt against his destiny. Everything he does appears to him but fragments, and sees no purpose to his work, but purposelessness. Purposelessness he cannot bear. The tribulation, the triviality in his professional business presses him to the ground, because he cannot counter it with the joyful courage which accompanies only the enlightened understanding, only expected perfection. He feels secluded, torn away from the connectedness of things, since he has neglected to connect his activity to the grand whole of the world. Jurisprudence disrobes the jurist as soon as the glimmer of a better culture casts its light upon its nakedness. Instead of his now striving to become a new creator of law and to improve deficiencies now discovered out of his own inner wealth. The physician is estranged from his profession as soon as grave errors demonstrate to him the unreliability of his system. The theologian loses respect for his calling as soon as his faith in the infallibility of his system begins to totter. How entirely differently the philosophical mind comports itself. As meticulously as the bread-fed scholar distinguishes his science from all others, the latter strives to extend the reach of his own and to re-establish its bond with the others. Re-establish, I say, for only the abstracting mind has set these boundaries, has sundered these sciences from one another. Where the bread-fed scholar severs, the philosophical mind unites. He early convinced himself that everything is intertwined in the field of understanding as well as in the material world, and his zealous drive for harmony cannot be satisfied with fragments of the whole. All his efforts are directed toward the perfection of his knowledge. His noble impatience cannot rest until all of his conceptions have ordered themselves into an organic whole, until he stands at the center of his art, his science, and until from this position outward he surveys its expanse with a contented look. New discoveries in the sphere of his activities, which cast the bread-fed scholar down, delight the philosophical mind. Perhaps they fill a gap which has still disfigured the growing whole of his conceptions, or they set the stone still missing in the edifice of his ideas, which then completes it. Even should these new discoveries leave it in ruins, a new chain of thoughts, a new natural phenomenon, a newly discovered law in the material world overthrow the entire edifice of his science. No matter. He has always loved truth more than his system, and he will gladly exchange the old insufficient form for a new one more beautiful. Indeed, if no blow from the outside shatters his edifice of ideas, he himself will be the first to tear it apart, discontented to reestablish it more perfected. Through always new and more beautiful forms of thought, the philosophical mind strides forth to higher excellence, while the bread-fed scholar, in eternal stagnation of mind, guards over the barren monotony of his school conceptions. There is no fairer judge of the merits of others than the philosophical mind. Shrewd and imaginative enough to make use of every activity, he is also equitable enough to honor the creation of even the smallest contribution. All minds work for him. All minds work against the bread-fed scholar. The former knows how to transform everything around him, everything which happens and is thought, into his own possession. Among thinking minds, an intimate community of all goods of mind is in effect. What is obtained in the kingdom of truth by one is one for all. The bread-fed scholar fences himself in against all his neighbors, whom he jealously begrudges light and sun, and keeps worried watch over the dilapidated barrier which but weakly defends him against victorious reason. For everything the bread-fed scholar undertakes, he must borrow incentive and encouragement from others. The philosophical mind, in his diligence, finds in his subject matter itself his incentive and reward. How much more enthusiastically can he set about his work? How much more lively will his eagerness be? How much more tenacious his courage and his activity, because for him work rejuvenates itself through work. Even small things become grand under his creative hand because he always has the grand objective which they may serve in view, while the bread-fed scholar sees even in great things only that which is petty. It is not what he does, but how he treats what he does, which distinguishes the philosophical mind. Wherever he may stand and work, he always stands at the center of the whole, and however far the object of his labors may draw him away from his other brothers, he is allied with them and near them through the harmonically working understanding. He meets them where all enlightened minds find one another. Okay, so my voice is getting tired. Maybe I'll revisit this, but yeah, I just wanted to touch base with everybody and share that came quickly to mind, and check out Allison's other channel, Wrench in the Gears. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Love you. Good night.